How's everybody? Everybody have a good Thanksgiving? Everybody eat a lot of turkey? Everybody ready for this briefing? Nobody still sleepy from their turkey? You gonna work with me on this? Hey, look, so it's very important to us, I think, that we put substance behind what we say. So we say that we're the Human Capital Command, and we say that people are the most important resource that we have. A large element of that, as I will tell you here in a second, are the folks that I've asked to come here today, plus their supervisors. And what we're going to try and do collectively, you and I, is embrace our new system that we have, but also re-energize the development of this portion of our human capital plan, which is the U.S. civil servant civilian employee. Okay? That's what this is all about. Now, at the end, we're going to have Q&A. And I know you've got lots of questions, and I'd like to hear them, okay? So I'm telling you in the beginning about the Q&A portion so that we can have some questions. So if we don't have any questions, you know what we got, right? You've heard me say this before. What do we have if we don't have any questions? A hostage situation. All right? It's late in the afternoon, it's after lunch, I'm looking at you, you're looking at me, and nobody can go anywhere. So think of your questions ahead of time, all right? And I've got, by the way, lots of civilian expertise right over here that has led me through this program and talked about individual development plans and are postured to truly give you the substantive answers that you would want. Okay, next slide. So here's the truth of the matter in commands like ours, especially headquarters staffs like ours. So you're in the blue. And as you step down big to little, left to right, you track with me, you're in the green. You track with me that you are a large percentage of this command. 67% of this command, of this headquarters staff, are civilians, U.S. civilian employees. That's why I think that's important. So at the end of the day, you make the donuts, right? When you think about it, if we're getting things done, it has a lot to do with the green portion of this chart. Next slide. And most of the folks in now the blue, as you go to the right, are at the grades of GS 12 to 13. Those small slithers are 1 to 6, and the smaller slither are those few folks that we have in the SES groups, with 23% in GS 7 to 11, and then 9% in 14 to 15. So everybody that is in the green, the blue, and the light blue and the brown are affected by our new program that we're talking about, which is upwards of 9% of the folks in the room today. Everybody is affected by the new program. So it's incumbent on all of us, supervisors and civilians alike, to be educated on the program. Next slide. All right, quick video that tells you a little bit about
it. The mission of the DoD is to provide the military force needed to deter war and to protect the security of our country. As a unified DoD civilian workforce, we support the uniformed services to accomplish its mission while holding fast to the DoD core values, leadership, professionalism, and technical knowledge. These core values are observable in our everyday lives as we execute our responsibilities ethically with courage, duty, loyalty, honor, and integrity. The foundation of any organization is its people, you. The DoD, its components and activities would not exist, and we would not be able to accomplish our mission without you. You are the essential element to collectively making the DoD a high-performing organization. High-performing organizations place great value on not only organizational success and achievement, but also success and achievement by the employees. This mindset fosters supervisor and employee engagement, continuous feedback, personal accountability, and employee reward and recognition. when we all proactively work toward this common goal of high performance, the DoD successfully accomplishes its mission, and employees become involved and share in the success of the entire organization reaching its goals. To achieve this culture of high performance, New Beginnings was launched. This collaborative labor management initiative was comprised of 3 labor management design teams, each focused on performance management, hiring flexibilities, civilian workforce incentives. Each of the design teams collaborated and provided recommendations to DoD, who after consultation with the components, OPM, and other subject matter experts, made final decisions on the labor management design team recommendations. The DoD Performance Management and Appraisal Program, or DPMAP, is New Beginnings' answer to a new performance management program. DPMAP is the department-wide performance management program linking individual performance to DoD values and organizational mission, while ensuring ongoing recognition and communication between employees and supervisors throughout the appraisal cycle. To institute policy for DPMAP prior to deployment, the department published the DoD Instruction, DoDI 1400.25, Volume 431. DoD Civilian Personnel Management System, Performance Management and Appraisal Program. This instruction establishes and implements policy and procedures, delegates certain authorities, and assigns responsibilities regarding the Civilian Performance Management Program within DoD. The department began phased implementation of the program in April 2016 and will continue to roll in organizations in a phased approach through 2018. Ultimately, all covered employees, approximately 600,000, will be under the new program by the end of the 2018 performance cycle. While numerous, some key aspects of DPMAP are developed in concert with national-level union representatives, provide strong focus on developing a culture of high performance, highlights importance of both the supervisor and employee in the performance management process, unifies covered DoD employees under a performance management program with a standard rating cycle of April 1st through March 31st and a standardized rating pattern: outstanding, fully successful, and unacceptable. Emphasizes timely monetary and non-monetary employee recognition and reward throughout the entire appraisal cycle, and not just the 365th day. Actively promotes continuous, meaningful, two-way communication and feedback throughout the entire appraisal cycle, with emphasis on employee input. Through strong focus on fairness, credibility, and transparency, DPMAP answers the call for an effective performance management program in the department. As you learn more about the DPMAP program and receive the associated training, you will be armed with the tools and techniques for success. As supervisors and employees, we are all stakeholders and have a vested interest in the success of this new performance management program. And together, we will achieve it.
Okay. So here's what we're going to go over today. Next slide. So we've gone through a lot of, I've been in the Air Force 30 years. How many of you have been in the military 30 years? Of one type, civilian and military. 30 years. 25 years. Over 30 years. Wait a minute. Over 40 years. All right, I'm not going to ask anymore. I'm going to take it from that you have seen many of the things that we outline here. The cycle of appraisal, management, performance, those kinds of things that we have gone through. And with each one of them, we've learned. So various level ratings, right? We've gone through various level ratings where something is to the right. Pass, fail. You either did the objectives in the performance plan or you did not. Pass, fail. NSPS. How many of you were involved with NSPS? How many of you enjoyed NSPS? All right. Well, if this was the Electoral College, NSPS would not win here today. But I will tell you that we learned some things from NSPS, right? We learned some things from NSPS, And some of those lessons you're going to see reflected in what's now being rolled out in DPMAP at the end. And we went back to pass-fail, and now we're at DPMAP. So when you look at DPMAP, it is not NSPS, and I'll show that to you here in a minute. But it does take from the lessons learned from NSPS as well as those other systems that we've had along the way. Probably out of all of those that we've had, this is the most comprehensive and built on the others that is reflected in what we now have. Next slide. So it's DoD-wide, it's not just you, as you saw from the video. Our transition period is beginning even as I speak, right? We are going into our transition period. You know, April is a key time in the civilian management process. And April will be really the Air Force-wide transition. 30 Jan, we are getting done with those things now, but this is an online training that I will ask for you to go do. Job Knowledge Online, I'm going to ask each of you to go do that. You and your supervisor develop performance plan. I'll come back to that. The third bullet down under key dates is performance plan workshops. It says optional, but I want you to go to it. All right? So I want you to go to it. I want you to really, we may have some exceptions because of schedules as we always do, but I want you to go to it. I want supervisors especially to go to it. So I know in AETC, I don't think you're allowed to stomp on tests when you're doing things and you say, hey, don't forget that question. I think that's a non-doer in AETC. So I'm not doing that, but if I were, you'd hear a stomp that says, it's important for us to learn how to build a performance plan under this new system. It's important for you, I think, to know what you're measured by, what an objective looks like, what an appraisal period will look like. All too often, there are surprises at the end of an appraisal period. Or my performance plan doesn't reflect what I do. You know, I have heard that many, many times at the end of the performance period. So going to these workshops, I think collectively, supervisors and subordinates alike, is a way to get ready to do that middle bullet, which is to develop the performance plan. So really you need to go to the workshop, do the online training, and then you're ready to sit down and develop under this new system, the performance plan, which isn't exactly like the ones that you may have been developing and participating in or was given to over the years. So please don't make the assumption that I've done many of these before, therefore these steps are not necessary. That would not be a wise assumption. And then this is not NSPS, as I said, and I'll show you what the difference is. Next chart. So, big picture, NSPS was a total human capital resource plan, right? NSPS dealt with pay bands, how we treated you if you move from one cubicle to the next, job descriptions, incentives. All of that was included in NSPS. Pay pools, for instance, pay bands, pay for performance, and assessment required for all objectives. All of those were a part of NSPS. That is not the case under DPMAP. We are not changing the pay scale. We are not doing the performance plan as it was under NSPS. There isn't a special derivative for you if you move from one job to another. Automatically, you're assessed for a new performance pay. That's not a part of this system. And more importantly, the very top bullet, as you saw from the video, why didn't we go forward with NSPS long term? There's several reasons, but one of the reasons was it wasn't done collectively at the beginning, most will admit, with our unions. And we have many unions across DoD and across the Air Force. The very beginning of that video, and I know you guys caught that, this is a collaboration, union at the national level, mind you, but a collaboration between unions and management to say, what can we both agree to? So that process has already happened. It is a lesson learned from the rollout of NSPS. Okay, I think that's a very, very important part. And then for me personally, I really like the last bullet because I remember trying to write through all the paperwork required of NSPS, and it was voluminous. There was a lot of paperwork required, and it outweighed, frankly, the advantages of NSPS, and was not, therefore, a desirable appraisal kind of system. This is 4 to 5 pages, mainly because we took out all that stuff that you see to the left. We're not doing all of that, so much of the paperwork that was required, the bureaucracy part of it, is not in this system. Next chart. So, let me talk about one other thing that is not necessarily tied to the overall DoD program, but is an AETC staff requirement that I'm asking you to embrace. And that is the individual development plan. Now, I was going to say how many of you have individual development plans, but don't raise your hand. I don't want to know. But I will tell you this, individual development plans is not a new requirement. Is that right? Would you agree? I'm asking the experts. They're shaking their heads. So IDPs are not a new requirement. IDP has been around, however, not necessarily enforced collectively and in some standardized way throughout our system. Why do we need it? And let me just answer the question that some of it might be in some of your heads. I won't say that it is. I don't need it. I've been in the job X number of years. I don't need an individual development plan. I am just so happy. What I need is for you to leave me alone, right? Some of you are thinking that. You might not say it, but the answer is in the eyes, and I see some of that, right? Just leave me alone. I'm developed, fully developed. Right? I'm fully developed. I used to be in the military. When I got out, I came back to a very similar job. Nobody in the United States Air Force knows this job better than me. I am convinced of it. That might be true, but every job that we have requires development because we are nothing like we used to be just 20 years ago. Well, maybe there's some similarities, but they aren't great. We are changing every day. Every job is changing. Either in the way that we deliver it, the way we want to deliver it in the future, or maybe the way we should think about it. Everybody should be developing. That's not synonymous with moving. That's not synonymous with being promoted. Developing. You can develop in place. I gave this brief once at, I'll just say, Base X. And I said, I promise you, you're developing. If you think you're not developing, you stand up and tell me why you're not developing. And I didn't think anybody was going to stand up. But lo and behold, there's always one, right? So this young man stood up, and he said, I'm retiring in 2 weeks, General, and I'm not developing anymore. I said, I want you to develop over at the transition office, where they're going to teach you about retirement and all those other things that you need to know. The development plan, in my view, is a time when you sit down with your supervisor, and it's required once, maybe twice a year, and you say what your expectations are, they view what you have done, and you talk about what's next, and they talk about the bridge to get you there. That's a forced conversation, I know, but it's a required conversation, and that really, in the heart of all of this, is what the IDP is saying. Now, uniformed folks don't need it. Captain Croft hits year 4 or 5 in the Air Force. He's going to go to SOS if he wants to or if he doesn't. He doesn't even have to know what's at SOS. We're going to tap him on the shoulder and say, the time clock hit, you're going to go. We're not going to wait until we don't make him a major and say, why didn't you go to SOS? Or he applies for a job and we say, you never did this. Because the system on the uniform side is a pull, right? It's a push, rather. It's a push. We push the required development at different times and stages to the individual, and they do it as long as they want to be in uniform and progress along. That's not true for Mr. Johnson. Now, Mr. Johnson's fictional. If there's a Mr. Johnson out there, I apologize. Mr. Johnson's fictional. Mr. Johnson can sit in his seat and never be asked about the next development stage. There is nothing in the system that will necessarily ask him or her about it. Nothing. And that's not a problem until we find out that progression is attached to some of those development things, or other wishes and desires in the human capital are attached to it, but there's nothing in the system to make it happen. So the expectation is that either there will be a little self-education, self-awareness, or something that occurs. Sometimes it does, sometimes it does not. The IDP is formalizing this conversation about expectations, about progress, those kinds of things. We absolutely need that in our civilian personnel process, in any system that we roll out, in order to make sure your expectations are known and that your supervisor is aware of them. And for supervisors, you have to go to school on it, right? You have to know what the opportunities are. If we say COLT what is COLT? But you need to know if you're a supervisor in a civilian personnel system. How many people do we send to ACSC on the civilian side? You should know that. At what point can a person, you ought to know that if you are a supervisor. I think it's key to that supervisory element of what you do. The IDP is going to force the conversation. All right, next slide. So who's the supervisor out here? No, raise them really high so I can see. Okay, so all of you supervisors, we're counting on you for the success of the IDP. We're counting on you to do the study with the help, obviously, of civilian personnel experts to ensure that everyone under your charge has an IDP. Everyone. So every civilian inside of headquarters AETC, every civilian is required to have an IDP. Every civilian. And I'm depending on you to make that happen. Now, I'm going to measure it as well. And we're going to look at it by directorate, and we're going to make sure that we get through it. But more importantly, not just that we get through it, but that it's a quality engagement. And that part we can't measure. That part we've got to depend on you. It's a quality engagement. Just because we have a requirement doesn't mean it's a quality engagement. But we're trying this, for instance, on the enlisted evaluation system. The comprehensive airman assessment. Some of you are familiar with the comprehensive airman assessment that we roll out for our enlisted airmen, and you have to sit down and go through. There are a lot of very personal and questions that are a part of the comprehensive airman assessment. The reason is we're driving for that quality where you know the people that work for you. You really know them. Do you really know the people? Do we really know our employees? Do we really know all of them? All of them. If I say, how you doing, what are you going to say? See, he said, good, sir, how about you? Now, I could have anticipated he was going to say, good, sir, how about you, or something like that. But if I go by the second day and I say, how you doing? What are you going to say second day? So he's changed a little bit, didn't he? He was good, sir, how you doing yesterday? Today, it's, I'm doing great. And then I'm going to say, no, how you really doing?
All right, things are going pretty good in the job. I'm happy.
All right. That's my third engagement. I don't know how he's doing yet, right? Do I? I really don't know. So true leadership and true management requires such an investment in time. Not to just go through the steps, but to embrace the fact that you care. That's what we're looking for in the IDP. That's the formalized thing we're doing twice a year. I want to know really how he's doing. And about the 8th time, he's going to tell me something. If for no other reason, so I'll stop asking him, right? He's going to, eventually, we're going to know each other. All right? And then I will be doing my job. I believe that, sincerely. I believe that. Then I will be doing my job as a supervisor, as a director, as a leader of airmen. Then I will. Not until then have I done it. And it doesn't matter if he started work last week or if he started work in the Army Air Corps. It's the same. It's the same. Human capital. It's the same thing. That's why we're requiring an IDP, and that's why we're going to measure it, and that's why I'm depending on you as supervisors to help us make this work. Okay, next slide. I'm going to tell you a couple of stories about IDPs without the names, and really about development, what it can do. And one is with mobility and one is without mobility. So start as a GS4, and I won't put any timelines to this because I don't want you trying to add up and come up with who I'm talking about. So started with, but these are real stories. Start as a GS4. Work part-time. So GS4 is not at the very beginning of the pay scale, but it's pretty close. All right? Started working part-time, completed a degree. Went over to the Personnel Palace over here, across the street, broadened out a little bit, and then, by the way, this is ironic, but participated in the design of DPMAP. So learning things, which even in that first set up there is a long way from starting off as a GS4, is it not? Our system, our civil service system allows this. Went to Squadron Officer School in Residence. Now, how many civilians go to Squadron Officer School in Residence? Not very many. But we send some every year. I would argue that we should send more from a command where there are 67-ish% of the staff are civilians. Why? Because it's there when you get in the big blue room with people all over the Air Force, 600 or so of them, from all different tribes of the Air Force, that you begin to learn that the world is bigger than AETC. At the customers that you serve. This is like going to meet your customers for a certain number of weeks. And you begin to grow and expand, perhaps even in what you want to do individually, but more importantly, the art of the business that we're in. You begin to learn more about it. And this particular person did. Also went to ACSC, online master's degree program. Anybody got kids in college? Anybody? Anybody got kids in college that did not get somebody else to pay for it? So I'm with you, right? It's expensive. Is it not? How much does it cost for the online ACSC master's degree program? So if selected, you can obtain a master's degree online that's credible in the United States Air Force through Air Command Staff College. That's like $30,000 sitting on the table. And it opens doors for you beyond where you are today. Now, you may or may not have that as a part of your development plan, but you should be discussing it to see if it is the right option. This particular person, it was the right option for them. So they're reassigned at the moment to a GS-13 position. I won't tell you the number of years, but if you look and you were to add the number of years, this would be an impressive thing to do. This is the power, and by the way, this is all within 3 square miles of where we're standing. They never left other than going to school for 10 months. They never left San Antonio, vacations aside. All through development. And our system, this great system we have, this powerful mechanism that we have, allows this. Allows this. It's an incredible investment if we use it. If we use it. And if our supervisors charge the people working for them and are aware enough to offer it to folks. We should have twice as many applicants as we can fill every year for the ACSC online program. We should have many more than what we currently have. Some of it, I believe, is a lack of awareness of the program and timing of how it works. I want that discussed during those individual development program discussions. All right, but some people move. Next slide. Very similar, GS4. And I'm telling you, this is only in America. GS4 became a GS11. All at JBSA, completed the master's degree program. And this was off-duty master's degree program in this particular case. Went to career broadener program, did SOS by correspondence, did not actually go to SOS. Became a GS-13, went to ACSC by seminar. None of those are in residence. Did another career broadening in DoD Executive Leadership Development Program, completed that, and is now, after Air War College, a GS-14. And meets the requirements, by the way, to be promoted to GS-15 in an impressive number of years. Started at the same place, just decided the only difference here, the major difference, is the mobility. The first one is for some people, the second one is for others, right? Just depends. I didn't put other things up here because of time, but we could have gone through a whole lot of real life changes that did not stop the development. You know, under one discussion with employee X, I was told I would do this next development step, but I'm going to have another baby and we have children. I said, great. Believe it or not, this is not the first time that we've had someone develop who also had children and a family. It doesn't mean you have to do something today. The key is it's the individual development plan. So there may be a period of time where you do less because of your own personal circumstances. There may be points where you pick that up later. We won't know that in general, but your supervisor should. And that should make up the discussion or a part of the discussion in the individualized development plan. So who's it for? Who's it for? First test question, who's it for? Me. Someone said me. I'll take that. So it's for all the me's. It's for everybody. Right? Okay. Do you have to move to develop? Can you develop in place? Good. Good. What if you're prior military? Can you develop? Should you? All right. Next slide. So we've got some milestones. 30 January, complete the training. 31 May, IDPs in place for all employees. Mid-year performance review along with our new system. And then a year-end appraisal. So the timing of when the IDP is done is meant really to make the system work better. So we need something in the system that tells us now the time to do it, now the time to do it. You may want to do more or often or frequently, but at least in the times that they are driven by, which are attached to this appraisal process. Therefore, we know there's something in the system to keep this occurring. Next slide. So all of these places, and we'll get this out if we haven't already done so to everybody, will give you more information. You'll get a chance to go to the workshops before you do those DP maps, and the civilian personnel staff, very professional staff will be there for you to reach out to, and your supervisors will be able to go as well. And we did a short version of this briefing in our staff meeting, I believe. And so most of the directors, even those who couldn't be in attendance today, have seen that. And I believe we have most of our civilian employees. I don't know, but if we have a significant number that we are missing, we can certainly circle back and get the information to you. Okay, next slide. All right, so here's the point. Here's it. No hostage situation. Fire away. So not the front row first, because I know everybody on the front row, and you can hold your questions till later. But I'll come back. Out here. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. How will current PDs play into developing the individual plans for each employee?
So how do current PDs play into the development of, I didn't hear the last part, the IDP? Go ahead, ma'am.
So hopefully everybody heard the question, but if not, I know we didn't hear it very well over here. How does the current PD play into the development of the IDP? Is that right, ma'am? They go hand in hand. The IDP itself is developing you in your current job, as well as any future jobs that your position may change to, organization may change. So they go hand in hand. Your supervisor is going to rate you on the performance of your elements on your performance plan. You won't be rated on the IDP. However, you will need to complete the training that the supervisor identifies that you need to be completing in accordance with your IDP.
So, ma'am, you have a chance during that session with your IDP to talk about your current performance plan. You know, if you believe, for instance, that it doesn't reflect what you're doing, you can talk about a request to have that changed. If you believe things should be added, for instance, that is developed over time. Some of our performance plans were written some time ago, right? And the job evolved and evolved and evolved, and the performance plan was stagnant. And it's never been changed. I've heard that numerous times. You get a chance to talk about that, the past, if you will. You also get a chance to talk about what you would like beyond the current things that you are doing. And then your supervisor, it's incumbent on them, either at that point or later, to go tell you what the bridge is to get there. So this is transparency. This should be all about transparency. I want to be that GS-13 that's over there. You should feel free talking about that. And your supervisor should say, today you are not qualified for that GS-13. Today, if you want that job, you're going to have to go here, you're going to have to develop this way, you're going to have to do these kinds of things. And then, if it were available, you would be at least able to make the cert and compete for it. An honest conversation. What would be bad is if it's a hug fest. Right? If all we do is go through the steps and say, I love you, you love me. Right? You can have anything you want. Then the same disappointments that we have today when advertisements become available and you don't make the search or you're not picked for jobs and misunderstandings, we will continue to have. So it has to be an honest conversation. There's a trust factor here. And part of it is the performance plan that you're currently under. Good question. Yes, sir.
Just follow that up with how would additional duties play into the plan?
Did you guys get that? How would additional duties play into the plan that are not written into your performance plan? Yeah. Any thoughts on that?
Sure. Additional duties don't normally rise to the level of a full, complete duty that you would be rated on. So it all depends on your job, the performance plan that you and your supervisor approve at the beginning of the appraisal cycle. If some of those additional duties rise to the level that they need to be incorporated into a duty or a standard on your performance plan, then they would be rolled in there and you would be assessed against those performance of those additional duties.
But you can also have a conversation about those additional duties. Are they contributing to what you're signed up for? That's an honest conversation. You know, did they are they leading to something? Are they value added from your perspective, and maybe from your boss's perspective? Why do you have those additional duties? Those are all fair questions to ask, especially since they're not a part of the objectives that you're being rated on. Yes, ma'am?
Good afternoon, sir. Will there be a standard format issued as far as developing the IDP?
Yeah. Absolutely. The answer is yes, but let me get you the perfect words for that yes.
So we talked about that when we put all this together. Who asked the question? Okay, Dr. Hull. The IDP right now, the Air Force doesn't have a standard format. We did come up with a draft. General Brown reviewed it. He was happy with it. We are going to offer that out there for everyone to use until we can come up with an electronic platform to connect to the DP map. We're going to go ahead and use that hard copy, and we'll just file that in the supervisor's work folder until then. But we are hopeful and cautiously optimistic that we're going to be able to get this connected electronically prior to this appraisal period starting. Does that answer your question? Okay, great. You're welcome.
So automated and somewhat simplistic, frankly, when you look at the form. We wanted it to be not difficult to fill out because it's as much about the conversation as it is the form which documents the conversation that you're going to have. Good question. Yes, ma'am.
Duties, there are always additional duties. I've been in civil service for many years, and they become permanent duties. And then the challenge is always, will my PD change, and will there be an increase in my grade? And the challenge that I've heard throughout the years is that they're concerned about writing out of those positions because of the increase of the grade. So how is that corrected, or are there opportunities for increasing in our grade?
So that just depends, right, on what the additional duties are, which is what I really meant by the comment earlier. It would be impossible to give a blanket answer and say additional duties should, but it just depends on how important they are, how much they're related to the objectives of that particular position. Do they have a lifespan? You know, is this going to carry on henceforth? And if it is going to carry on and carry on and carry on, then it's a part of the position description. Now, what that will do to the position description just depends. If it has to be regraded, if you have to recompete for it, the thing to understand is that latter part, is it going to be, make us redo that position description? Will that change the grade? Maybe. And I know that might not be a satisfying answer, but the answer is maybe. And then will you compete and get that same position? That's a maybe. And I'm not trying to make any false promises about that maybe part of it. I'm just trying to ensure you have the conversation and that you're fully aware of it and that the supervisor is charged to act on it. Sometimes, absolutely, additional duties should become a part of the position description. What that does to it, we send it to a classifier. You know as well as anyone how our system works. We send it to a classifier, and maybe or maybe not, it changes the grade. It's a good question.
Sir? Yes, sir. Since supervisors' thought processes are different among organizations, is there going to be are there standard sets of questions that can help them so that, the IDP is not all over the place?
Right, so the IDP is a standardized format. So there are basic number of questions that every supervisor will go through. So yes to that part. And I think that was the first part of your question. Was there a second part to your question?
No.
Yeah, so every no, all supervisors are not created equal, all employees are not created equal. Absolutely. We absolutely accept that. But what we're going to ask that those standard questions be asked. And we're going to ask that we perform a little bit of quality control of this at the director level. And then we're going to trust our directors to ensure that the quality standards are maintained in their directorate. So one, that they're done, and two, that they're quality.
Sir?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that the training's available, whether it's supervisor or civilian training. If that's so, how is it going to be tracked? Who's going to track it? Who's going to know that it's been taken? When we get new bodies in, how do they know they have to take it? What's the process? Yep. And also down the road, how is it going to affect the overall, the process that they're coming up with this particular program?
Okay, good question.
Good question. The training that we're doing is online. It's a DoD platform called JKO, Joint Knowledge Online. Currently, we don't have access to get into JKO to find out who's taken the training. However, DoD gives reports to Air Force on a monthly basis, and then that information is uploaded into the civilian personnel database to track your training completion. So we will start getting those reports from Air Force, and locally here with the CPS and our staff on A1, we will assist directors in ensuring that they know where the status is of their folks as far as getting the training completed. The military supervisors, they will be tracked as well. They'll just be tracked a little bit differently because they're not in our civilian database, but we will receive that information from Air Force on a regular basis as well. As far as military supervisors coming in as new supervisors, if they have not already received the training, then they'll in turn be notified that they need to get their training done as well. Did I answer both of your questions?
Yeah, I kind of believe it's similar to how we're working with base training today, so I think that's going to end up being that way. We have to submit some kind of inquiry for you at a later date to make sure we're on the same page.
You bet. And I will tell you, just in talking with Mr. Manning as we got ready for this, I'm not totally there yet that our process is good enough and fluid enough that when someone new comes in or moves in, that we automatically pick them up, they get into the system, and we track it. But we are working on how to make that fluid, because you have a valid question. We can start off strong and then go straight back to where we were, simply because there's no way to govern the bureaucracy and the doing of the system. So we're working that, sir, and I think as we get through this, we'll probably have even a more holistic answer for you.
Can I follow up, sir?
Sure, sure.
For new supervisors, once we get into 1 April of 17, AU is developing, they're in charge of developing the supervisor training, which all our military supervisors are required to take the first time they become supervisors. So as soon as we launch DPMAP on 1 April, everybody who is a new employee or brand new military supervisor of civilians, they'll be required to take that training, and that's how the training will be completed to sustain the force.
Good. Good. Questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I have a question. I think it still comes back to the additional duties as well. I know everybody's getting hurt by all the downsides. Oh, can y'all hear me? Yeah. Everybody's getting hurt by all the downsizing, continual downsizing. And when we talked about the additional duties, a lot of the additional duties are time intensive, and they are required for the organization to function. And then when we talk about the PDs and the IDPs, and we're talking, well, how do we put that in there and make that become a part of the job description? Then you got to compete for it. Okay, well, we're not going to make that part of the job description. We're hoping somebody's going to step up and going to take care of it and do it, which is what inherently happens. We have people that are constantly taking on the burden of those complicated additional duties, but then they're not being rated for stepping up to fill that position, and it's not going to be included into a PD. Hopefully that somebody else takes over and does it again, and that continues to go on, but it actually hurts us because we're not allotting for that time, but it's required for the organization to function.
Yeah. Yeah, I think let's take this for an action just in general, and that is that we put out at least general guidance and expectations for how we treat additional duties in the performance plan itself, since we've heard that a couple of times. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
As I took this training and everything, I noticed that you're going to have to get an IEP, and you're going to have it approved. Okay? What is going to stop it from one supervisor using that plan on multiple employees so that he has that one approved plan and he makes it a standardized practice throughout his or her directorate?
So the question is, what's going to keep, if I hear you right, so we get an IDP filled out and approved within the directorate. What keeps us from changing the name and using it 15 times? It would be impossible. Now, it wouldn't be impossible administratively. It'd be pretty easy administratively. But it wouldn't be an individualized development plan. It wouldn't reflect, I don't believe any two people have the exact same desires. It's personal information on there, so it would be impossible to just change the name and do it over. You have to do the work. Remember what I said, you got to go by 8 times. You got to have the conversation, and it's got to be done in a manner so that plan is individualized and then kept fresh because things change. Could you do it? Yes. You could administratively do something like that. But the good news is I am incredibly confident that once the guidance is out, our directors will hold the quality at the level, and we trust them. So that's how we're going to do it. We're going to tell them what the quality is. We're going to make sure they have the training. We're going to measure the completion rates, and then we're going to trust them for the quality. That's how we do business. We're not going to go through and sample 75 here and 60 there and see if anybody's speeding. We're not going to do that because we don't have to. We've got our directors to run that program. And so I don't believe it's going to happen. I don't. Let's see. All right, next question. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Had a online system that lets you, based on your career, on your job, where you wanted to go, what's most logical based on what you already have, and it would help guide you with a path.
Yeah.
Will it have something like that that we could use to help
About
choose?
opportunities?
Yes.
I'm not sure if we have the opportunities element on there yet, do we?
Okay, so you were asking about opportunities for employees to be able to, if they want to go further beyond where they're sitting, or develop school-wise. If there is a way, you said from your previous organization there was a way to go out online and look at what's available. Okay, so I'm going to ask this question. Do you remember where online? Because so it was career field specific. Okay, so and I think you might be referring to MyVector, VA.
Their version of MyVector.
Okay, so it would be, okay, yes, sir. So what we have similar to that is MyVector, and I don't know if any of you are familiar with that or have been out there. How many are familiar with MyVector and have actually gone out there and played around, created an account? So good, so most of you are familiar with it. So you can actually go out there and pick a mentor and work with that mentor, and it can be anybody, and it's not just for civilians, it's for military as well. And you can go out and pick your mentor, and then it's online, so you're not going to have that sit down face to face like the IDP will facilitate. But it's still a tool that you can use in addition to the IDP. So yes, MyVector is out there. It'll allow you to pick your career field. It'll allow you to pick what rank of mentor you'd like, and try to connect with someone in your career field. You can even connect with somebody that maybe you're wanting to go a different direction to a different career field. You can pick somebody in that career field and have them mentor you as well. So that's did I answer your question? Okay. You can find it on the portal. So if you go out to Air Force portal and you type in MyVector, it'll come up.
Yes, sir.
Yes, the question I have is, we got this in your now. What's the end state? How does this affect the recognition portion of the credit system? Is there going to be a change in that, or is it still going to be passed, basically get 1.25 of your annual salary as your monetary bonus, and then they give you days on it? Is that going to stay the same, or does this really have any effect on that?
Okay, good question.
Unfortunately, we don't get a new budget along with DPMAP. We're still held to the constraints that we are, especially under sequestration. But it still has in DPMAP, there's still the ability to recognize and reward your folks. In fact, DPMAP is focusing more on not just the rating, but recognizing individuals throughout the appraisal cycle. So not just that one day. But there is time off awards still available, cash awards are still available, quality step increases are also available for those who receive a level 5 rating. So that's one of the big differences, is we'll go from pass-fail to now have a level 5, level 3, and a level 1. So in order to get a QSI, you would need to get a level 5.
But please, and it was on the video here, the system encourages rewards throughout the year. I mean, as I read it, it encourages rewards throughout the year. Unlike what some other systems may have said, in most cases, we reserve awards to the end of the year, and they're standardized, kind of like you said, in 1 and 1.5%. This is more dynamic than that. Yeah.
When I was under DSIPs, they talked about the 3, the 4, and the 5 rating. And what they started doing was tacking on policies that if you get to get a 5, and it made it almost impossible to get a 5. Transparency is a very important caveat to that. The other things that I just wanted to make a couple of points on, I'm in the civil engineering career field, and we have our own IDP that we do in there as well, and I would like to start to see them mirror up more if this is where the direction we're going in, because we have that IDP, we have my vector, now we have this. 3 platforms, you're basically putting the same information in. Being in the civil engineer career field, we're putting a lot of emphasis on PME, but we have other ways that civilians are being evaluated for performance and also for development, and that's certifications. And since sequestration, there used to be policies in place where the Air Force would cover preparations for professional engineers, certified facility manager, and other certifications, but since sequestration, that has really dried up. And I would like to encourage you to reinvest in those programs because that helps build that workforce for tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree with you on the reinvestment. That's not necessarily on certification, maybe on certification, but certainly on training. And that's part of what we're going to be able to track, I think, is what development that requires training did we request and how much of it did we get to over the course of the years, straight from the IDP. And I think that's an important element of what we're doing. So you're right in that regard.
Sir, I noticed she mentioned quality step increase. Is the regular step increase based on your time and grade? Is that going away with this program?
I don't believe it. Go ahead.
Good question. The within grade increases is what you're talking about. Those remain the same, still within time. As long as you have an acceptable rating of a level 3, then you can still get your within grade increases. The quality step increases are above and beyond the within grade increases.
That answer your question, ma'am? Okay, let me go to the front row here. I know you guys had some questions.
My question was actually very similar to that one, and that was when you developed the IDP, if you looked at functional development plans to marry them up, and from my perspective, it'd be useful just to have one instead of having to fill out both.
Right, and this is going to mature a little bit, and I do know that within some functional areas, and we did talk about this, really we're going to be able to lean on that functional IDP with all of the information and meet some of the requirements in some of the functional areas. Now that's frankly a minority number of the functional areas. That's not the majority of it, but there will be some, especially in some of the cores that we have that are outside of the line where they have developed individual development plans that are meeting this requirement. So we'll be able to transfer information and not have to duplicate. Okay, front row, any more questions? Anybody that we missed that has last shots here? Yes, ma'am.
Is there going to be any penalties, like if you're going for GS11 but haven't done SOS? Is it going to be tied in any way, or where if you haven't accomplished certain things in your IDP for promotion-wise?
So it depends on the job, as always, that you're going to, and so we couldn't give a blanket answer. But I would say that those are great questions. So when the point behind the IDP is that you have a roadmap, and that your supervisor is informed enough to tell you what will stop you from making it to where you want to go. In some cases, they might recommend your competitive advantages is to complete SOS. If you want a competitive advantage for this type of position, it is most likely going to be viewed positively if you finish SOS. Now you know, right? Now you know, and all's fair and transparency, as someone said, exists, and you can make an informed decision. That's really the purpose of the IDP. Sometimes yes, sometimes it won't really matter, depending on where you're going and what your particular development plan is. Okay? All right. Okay, folks, look, oh, you have one? I didn't see it. Yes, sir.
I know,
yes,
sir. Mike O'Neill. I want to follow up on the question the two ladies brought up, because I think what they're asking is, this IDP is going to be very supervisor-centric on how knowledgeable or educated the supervisor is. And I think what they were getting at is there something I, as a member, can go out and say, you know, if I'm thinking about going from a 7 to a 13 in my AFS or my job, what are some of the milestones I need to start looking at, just in case my supervisor isn't educated enough?
Yeah.
Is there going to be something that I can go research electronically, and my vector doesn't do that? It again is based on the person you pick as your mentor. They're looking for something automated or out there published for people to look at.
Right. Thank you. Go ahead.
So each career field team has their own path. Some are pyramid, some are running bar charts. That's where the supervisor needs to go with the employee and look and see what the path is. And in that path, it'll tell them what's required with each step forward.
So let us also take this task, because I think it's, I won't agree with you that we can't get there with supervisors. 100% is a difficult promise to make, but I believe we can get there with supervisors. But I also think we can provide to all of you, what are the developmental opportunities in the Air Force? What are they, and where do they fit by grade? I think we can give you that on maybe 2 sheets of paper. What we can't tell you, because we don't know, is your path. But what you can do is look at where your grade is and then make a logical cross to where you want to go and see what the development opportunities are. We'll tell you the ones that are local. We'll tell you the ones that are centrally managed, that require a competitive board, and we'll also tell you those that historically we've funded and not funded. I think that information is available. It probably is already available, but you may not know exactly where to go get it. So let us take that as a commitment, okay? All right. Hey, I want to tell you before we wrap up here, I appreciate your time and your patience. There is no perfect human capital system. We know that. But it is worth us investing our time in and our energy in to get as close to perfect as we can. I also want to tell you, really on behalf of General Robinson, who is TDY today, or I'm sure that he would be leading this conversation, is what you do for our Air Force is critical. And we've got to get to the point where everybody understands and values what it takes to build, sustain, train, educate, recruit, assess a United States Air Force airman. Part of what it takes is right here in this room. And I don't want you to ever forget it. There are airmen out there, and I use A, big A, airmen out there who are putting their life on the line, all of their personal sacrifices, and in the back of their head, if they know it or not, they're hoping that you do your job well. Because it has something to do with how they end up. I had a chance to chat with 2 airmen on Thanksgiving Day who got a chance to leave BMT and really come eat. And I learned a lot of things that day. I learned one thing, that when you're 18 and 20, you really can eat a lot. You really can, almost nonstop, and it doesn't matter how you mix it up. But I also learned about all their wishes, their hopes, and their dreams that they were able to share, just a couple of weeks in the BMT. How many times they tried but not got accepted. In this case, someone wanted to be a combat controller and the other one wanted to be TAC-P. How they'd met these contractors and other folks, the commercials they'd seen, the video games that they played that inspired them to want to do it. And then they had all these hopes, and they brought them to San Antonio. And they're just hoping that folks like us do our part so they can go be a part of what they've always wanted to do. And beneath all of that is how we continue to have the greatest Air Force in the world. And on the staff, over 60% of that are the folks in this room. So it's a worthy time. It's worthy time spent to invest in our civilian human capital. I believe that. So I know this is not perfect. We won't design a system that is, but we're going to put our best efforts toward making it work for the individuals in this room and then in part for our United States Air Force. All right? You guys enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much for your time. Carry on.